Well, welcome to Tuesday and an afternoon of late-breaking news here in Washington and on the campaign trail. President Biden moves to grant legal status to 500,000 immigrants and their children, so long as those immigrants are married to an American citizen. Will it be enough to bring back a key part of his base? Plus, Donald Trump delivers another stem winder on the stump, rallying the faithful in swing state Wisconsin, where he's in a dead heat with President Biden. We break down the latest in the race for the White House. And mea culpa, mea culpa. The Boeing CEO faces the music and angry families who lost loved ones in his company's crashes. He makes a dramatic apology, even as a new whistleblower emerges with new accusations of a cover-up. And he's burning down the House and the Senate. Talking Heads frontman David Byrne wants to start making cents and dollars, taking the halls of Congress to lobby for fellow artists. All that and more, The Hill on NewsNation starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Vaccaro, filling in for Blake Berman. Joining the panel today, T.W. Arrighi. He's a former communications aide to Senator Lindsey Graham and Congressman Mike Pompeo. Michael Starr Hopkins, Democratic strategist. Carly Atchison Byrd, former national spokesperson for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And Brad Howard, former senior aide to House Democrats. Okay, we start today with President Biden taking a sweeping executive action to protect undocumented spouses married to U.S. citizens.
For those wives or husbands and their children who have lived in America for a decade or more but are undocumented, this action will allow them to file paperwork for legal status in the United States, allow them to work while they remain with their families in the United States.
Okay, this new executive action would impact about 500,000 non-citizen spouses and 50,000 children of those non-citizen parents. To be eligible, the non-citizen spouse has to be married to a U.S. citizen as of yesterday, June 17th, and must have lived in the U.S. for at least 10 years. And non-citizen children must be under the age of 21 with a parent married to a citizen. Okay, panel, this is clearly an olive branch to progressives who've been angry about the last move on the border that the president made, restricting asylum. Is it going to work? I'm going to start with you, Brad, and bring Democrats back into the fold.
No, I mean, I think, number one, this is just good policy. I think when you say olive branch to progressives here, I mean, they obviously want bigger and bolder action, and, I'm not sure that they're ever going to be happy until it's full citizenship. But there's a broad swath of the American people across the ideological spectrums who are in this position, who have found love through someone who's not a citizen. This is a common sense, reasonable policy to get them to a path. I guess it's a green card. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a green card.
Green card. So it's not citizenship. It's not amnesty.
Exactly.
They allow them to stay here legally and to work.
And yet, Carly, it's being called amnesty by Republican opponents. So is this just naked politics in an election year? Is it good policy or is it both?
I think it's politics, but I don't even think it's. I disagree that it's good policy. I think anytime you do something to incentivize more illegal immigration, they say they have all these checks. We're dealing with an administration that has created this crisis we've seen at the border. Let us not forget how we got here in the first place. On day one, Joe Biden started enacting his open border policies. Day two, he removed the Remain in Mexico. Look, I've been down to the border. I've talked to Border Patrol agents. The Remain in Mexico policy is something they say would be a game changer. And instead of doing things that make sense, like Remain in Mexico, like declaring an emergency at the border because we have so many people coming across illegally, he's doing things to placate to different political parties. It's not going to work.
Michael, people talk about the Hispanic vote like it's monolithic. Yeah, okay, I mean, obviously there are different groups of Hispanics within the Hispanic voter group, largely speaking, with different kinds of concerns. But this seems like it's more or less tightly targeted.
It does. And look, this is targeted towards progressives as an olive branch. I think you're 100% correct. But it is good policy because at the end of the day, Republicans had a chance through that Thune bill to actually get legislation put forward. Democrats were willing to sign onto a bill that they didn't like. They didn't author, but they were willing to do it because that's how democracy works. Both sides come to the table and both sides leave that table a little upset with what they got, but also a little happy. Here, Republicans walked away from a bill that they authored. So the president has to do what he's got to do.
TW, before I come to you, I think we have a soundbite. President Trump, he was on for like 2 hours out in Racine, Wisconsin today, and he had some unkind things to say about President Biden's announcement, which is just a couple hours old, and so it's already controversial. Do we have that former President Trump bite from Racine?
Joe Biden's formally granting he's going to formally grant a mass amnesty to millions of illegal aliens that came into our country.
Okay, the former president calls it mass amnesty. The administration calls it parole in place. How's this going to play out in the 5 months we have left before November 5th?
Well, I think most Americans agree with him to a degree. I think they see an unfair nature in our immigration policy. All these people came in illegally. There's millions of people around the world who would love to come into America and are trying to do it legally, and they see it as unfair, people cutting the line. I agree we need a pathway. I agree with Senator Graham that I wish Congress would piecemeal immigration and border policy, take some wins and keep moving forward instead of this all-or-nothing approach. I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is Americans still believe the border is a mess because it is, and immigration is a massive problem because it is, and this doesn't help.
But here's one thing the Republican response always fails to address is what's the answer for the millions of undocumented immigrants that are here? Like, you can't ship them all back.
11 or 12
because
million.
it would just be a colossal consequence to the economy. It'd also be a colossal expense to the taxpayers to round them all up and send them back. So I think, again, this is a reasonable policy to people that have an anchor to this country and community and want to stay. We should reward that.
As we've heard, the move has angered many Republicans, but they're not the president's target audience today. I think we can agree on that. Joining us now is NewsNation's Kelly Meyer, live from the White House, where she just spoke to a key Democratic ally of the president who was there at that ceremony, Kelly.
Yeah, Vic, 2 weeks ago, immigration advocates and some Democratic lawmakers didn't want to be anywhere near the White House, and that includes chair of the Hispanic caucus, Nanette Barragan. She was one that was disappointed in the president's previous actions 2 weeks ago, but today she was standing directly behind the president as he announced these executive actions, and I spoke with her one-on-one just after that announcement. Take a listen.
What I make of this is that we had conversations with the president and the White House for several months. We know that enforcement only has not worked. And so the conversations have been about making sure we're having a balanced approach. And today, what we hear from the president and his actions show his values of keeping families together and making sure that we're providing these protections to people who've been made promises for a long time, who've been in this country for a long time. And so we're very excited. We applaud the president, and we want to stand with him in what he's doing today, and that is providing protection to the spouses of U.S. citizens, people who've been married to American citizens who've been in this country for over 10 years, and their children, to keep families together.
Why do you think this is happening now?
You know, it's a matter of time. It's a matter of making sure they can get all the ducks in a row. But for us, this is a day to celebrate. It's a day to make sure that we're telling people about this opportunity. There are people that are crying tears of joy, people that are having a sigh of relief and saying, finally, I can get the work permit, I can come out of the shadows, I don't have to leave this country for 10 years or any amount of time to stay here and stay with my family. And that is what matters, is that we are recognizing the contributions that immigrants make to this country, but that we're also providing them protections and not letting a complex glitch in the immigration system tear apart our families.
And this is something that you have pushed for a long time, and within the caucus as well, conversations with the president. How did it feel to stand behind him? You mentioned you were right behind him during his speech today. How did that feel to be there and a part of this?
It was great. It really was. It's such a happy day to be able to come here and say, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for protecting families and keeping families together. It was a historic moment to be there and experience that and hear him talk about it and do that and be in a room full of stakeholders that help make this happen, immigration groups and immigrants and activists who all work together, and we rode in the same direction to make this happen.
And this is coming now 5 months away from Election Day. Do you think this has anything to do with politics?
You know, every decision anybody makes is politics, but at the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. And, you know, the president has had many conversations and has considered many of the Hispanic caucus requests for executive actions. We hope this isn't the last one and that we will continue to get some more good news down the pipeline.
The last one is what happens if former President Trump is elected again and comes in and tries to unravel this?
Well, if the former president is reelected, we're all going to be in trouble because he's promised to deport people en masse and even pick up U.S. citizens and people who shouldn't be deported. So we're going to do everything we can to stop and prevent that. The other thing we got to do is make sure we have the House and we have the Senate to do everything we can to stop any effort to try to undo the progress that's been done today.
Yeah, Vic, a really interesting conversation, especially on the timing of all of this. Vic, her saying that they had to get all their ducks in a row when asked, there's a question was asked in the briefing today, why now is this happening, Vic?
Okay, Kelly Meyer from her post on Pebble Beach in the White House North Lawn. Thank you very much. And we will have more on this in just a couple of minutes. The Republican senator from West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, will join us to talk about President Biden's new policy. Meantime, former President Donald Trump's New York gag order stays in place. That's the ruling from New York's Court of Appeals, which today declined to hear Trump's challenge to the gag order in his criminal hush money case. The court saying the order does not violate his constitutional rights. So joining me now is Jesse Weber. He's a NewsNation legal contributor and host of Law and Crime Network. Jesse, New York's Court of Appeals turned down the former president's request. Is this a surprise in any way for Trump's legal team, do you think?
I don't think they're necessarily surprised. I don't think they're going to say that, but I don't think they're really surprised because, remember, they said there was no real constitutional issue at stake here. So as much as they were making arguments about the First Amendment being violated, and this was kind of an emergency appeal, at the end of the day, Donald Trump might not like the gag order, but there was a lot he could say in this. And really at this point, they didn't even issue an opinion. It was just at this point in time, they're not going to consider it. Maybe they'll consider it down the line.
Okay, we are in sort of uncharted territory, as is often the case in the last 8 years with President Trump and the former president now. He's got June 27th, we got the debate coming up with Joe Biden in Atlanta. We've got July 11th is the sentencing date, and we've got July 15th for the start of the Republican National Convention. July 11th, I want to come back to you on that. This is your bailiwick. Do you think that's going to go forward? The sentencing date for the former president.
One more thing that we're looking out for. The issue from the Supreme Court, if they're going to determine whether or not Donald Trump is immune from prosecution. We can talk about that another day. Yes, I think the sentencing is going to move forward. I mentioned this so many times before, but I really don't believe that the judge is going to issue a sentence of prison time. I say that because while there are 34 counts, perhaps he wants to make an example of Donald Trump. Remember, these are low-level felonies, the lowest level felony we have in New York, nonviolent offender, 78 years old. The politics comes into play. Does he really want to be the first judge to sentence a former president to prison when he has so much discretion not to do that? So the sentencing will be significant. Could be probation, could be conditional supervision, conditional release, but I don't really think that prison is on the table here.
Yeah, Jesse, stand by for a second, because you brought up an issue that we're going to be talking about a lot, and it could be as soon as Thursday and or Friday, panel, and that is when we could be hearing from the Supreme Court. Those are decision days, a big deal. June is the time where we hear, and June is running out. What the Supreme Court's going to decide, the immunity case is hanging out there. What's going to happen?
Well, who wants to jump on this one?
Well, from the past comments of the justices, it looks like it's either going to be kicked down to a lower court, or they're going to say they're uphold Fitzgerald Nixon and basically say, in the official capacity, Donald Trump was acting. He thought there was fraud in the election. He has immunity over his actions. But I want to just make a quick point of what that looks like on the opposite side.
All right.
216 years ago today, Aaron Burr, former vice president, stood trial for treason. Outside of these were not official roles. He led an armed rebellion against the western states in Mexico to try to take them over.
Okay.
That would be outside of official actions. He was out of office. Donald Trump was in office. I think they say he's immune.
Wow.
That was a great history lesson there.
Are we accepting the premise that Trump led the folks on January 6th?
No, he did not. No, that's exactly
No, what I would say is, look, I really hope, I think most legal experts are saying they rejected that he's going to get full immunity here. There may be some partial immunity to your point. I'm not a Supreme Court expert, but what I will say, as I've said on the show many times, like I'm an Article I supremacist, that I think the framers wanted Congress to be the primary and supreme branch of government. And so I even have concerns with DACA and with these new executive orders because he's making policy when Congress should be doing that. But
I like that.
But they are Band-Aid solutions because Congress is not doing its job.
I'm going to bring Jesse back in for a second, because Jesse, let's just say, all right, for the sake of speculation, that the court decides that he's not immune, that the SEAL Team 6 threshold, if you will, carries the day at the Supreme Court. Would there be enough time in that scenario for the special prosecutor to bring the case before the election, before the judge here in Washington?
It's a great question. I think what they're going to say is, so assume that they say that a president is immune for official acts. Are they going to give the lower court some guidance on what the official acts are or what they're not? Are they going to give them a formula to determine how you determine what official acts are? And whatever that is, it will go back to the lower court. And as they work it out, let's even say you get jury selection by August, September. There's no way this trial would actually be completed before the election. So I think it would be very ambitious. We even see a trial before the election, let alone the conclusion of it.
Yeah, well, like we said, uncharted territory. What an extraordinary set of circumstances we're in right now. Okay, Jesse Weber, thank you very much. And coming up, a top Senate Republican joins us. I'll get her thoughts on today's sweeping immigration plan from President Biden. Plus, he denied calling Milwaukee horrible. Now he's campaigning just outside that city. We'll have a live report from today's Trump rally in Racine. And it was once a jewel of American industry. Now it faces fresh questions and anger from all sides today on Capitol Hill. Stunning admissions today as Boeing CEO takes the hot seat in Congress.
I'm trying to remember something.
Welcome back to the Hill on NewsNation. President Biden's recent immigration actions and several arrests of illegal immigrants accused of murder are the latest evidence of how border security is playing as a major campaign issue this election season. Republicans have questions about how the White House is carrying out its enforcement efforts. And Senator Shelley Moore Capito is a leading GOP senator on this issue, and she joins us now. Senator, thanks very much for being with us. I see you there in the Russell Senate Office building. The sweeping immigration actions announced today by the White House, there are a lot of requirements tied to them, including spouses wanting to apply for legal residency, must have been in the country for a decade. So do you still see this as a potentially dangerous step for the country, even though there are these restrictions, there are these thresholds to get a green card?
You know, I think what the president is doing is trying to mask over the dismal failure that he's had at the southern border throughout his tenure. We've got millions and millions of undocumented illegals here. Yes, they are committing crimes. Yes, they are committing murders of our citizens, and we have terrorists now that we know that have come through the southern border. So instead of focusing on that, he wants to focus on something he believes will give him some election year bump, which is to grant work visas to people who are married and who are here undocumented or are married and been here a long time. You know, to me, these are just fluff pieces that A, don't solve the problem, that B, just speak to a certain constituency that he's losing on. And so I think it also will be end up in the courts, and it'll never come about. So I don't put a whole lot into what he did today. I wish he would focus on what we see are criminal elements coming across our border, carrying fentanyl too, and killing our citizens.
Senator, according to the White House, it would essentially give this parole, as they're calling it, to 500,000 individuals who are here in this country, albeit illegally. Do you think it's fair, if they've been married to an American for 10 years, to be given this? It's not citizenship, as far as we know. It's ability to work, a green card. Do you think that's fair or equitable in any way?
You know, I think that the substance of what he did today is just trying to appease certain elements who are looking at his immigration policy and don't agree with the direction he's going. Instead of spending his energy on people who've been here 10 years and are married to an American citizen, you know, that all sounds great to certain people. But the fact of the matter is he's turned a blind eye to where we have the real problem. Let's address the real problem here, Mr. President. I think that's where he should put his efforts.
Okay, Senator, you allege that several groups which receive money under the Inflation Reduction Act are actually anti-law enforcement at the border and should therefore not get federal funds. So what are you alleging, and what are you planning on doing about it?
When the Inflation Reduction Act was passed, I said that at that point in time, with the billions of dollars that were being spent there, that we're going to have a lack of transparency, there's too much money going out, nobody's going to be accountable. And what we have found through the hard work of my staff and my oversight capacity is that certain groups are getting these environmental justice grants that are anti-American, anti-police, pro-Hamas, and anti-enforcement of immigration. So this has happened. $50 million to the Climate Justice Initiative and 2 other groups through Fordham University who are immigration groups are going to oversee dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act. They're anti-enforcement immigration. They don't believe in safety in our cities, and yet they're making decisions about climate money. That makes no sense. While the president says he's trying to, fix the immigration problem. There's no accountability here. That's just $100 million I've gotten into. That's not into the billions, and we're still digging.
Okay, Senator, for the record, we have tried to contact some of those groups that you mentioned. They have not yet responded to us. I want to move on to these new figures showing the level of border...
Yeah, I wouldn't respond either if I were them.
All right. We'll give them some time. There are some new figures, however, that showing the level of Border Patrol apprehensions on the southern border is down since the president announced his actions to curb asylum, the ability to claim asylum when coming into this country for illegal migrants. In the last week, they're down below 3,000 for each day, which is significantly lower than it's been in the immediate past anyway. Our correspondent on the border reports this is the lowest number in 3 years. Does this mean the president's actions are working?
No, it doesn't mean the president's actions are working because they've changed the way they're calculating the numbers. If you come through a border station and you claim asylum, you're there illegally, but you're coming through one of the border crossings, you're not counted as coming in illegally anymore, according to the way they're calculating that starting last month. So we're not apples to apples comparisons here. That's a problem. The other thing is, I think you see ebbs and flows in the immigration numbers. It could be holidays. It could be 100-degree heat. It could be a lot of things. Maybe some of it can be attributed to what the president said, but I hardly think so.
All right. Senator Shelley Moore Capito, thank you very much for joining us on this hot Tuesday in Washington. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All righty. There's still much more ahead on the Hill on NewsNation. Mick Mulvaney joins us for a Hot Mic with Mick. We'll talk Donald Trump on the campaign trail, the ethics investigation into Congressman Matt Gaetz, and what to watch for today's primaries. And more people swear by it. Nicotine pouches taking off in popularity. So why is one of the biggest selling brands suspending its sales online? We'll explain. All that coming up here on the Hill. Well, Donald Trump is back on the campaign trail today. He held a rally in the key battleground state of Wisconsin. Just days ago, he called Milwaukee horrible because of its crime problem. That was during a private meeting with House Republicans here in Washington. That account, of course, has been under dispute about what he said and what he meant. And NewsNation campaign reporter Libby Dean is in Racine, where the event just wrapped up. It was a long one out there, wasn't it, Libby?
Yeah, it really was. Trump's remarks here today, Vic, around an hour and a half. And really the importance of Wisconsin as a swing state and a battleground state cannot be overstated here. It is a must win for President Biden heading towards November. Now, Trump's remarks, as I said, a little over an hour and a half. But I want you to take a listen to how he chose to begin those remarks.
I love Milwaukee. I was the one that picked Milwaukee, I have to tell you. I was the one that picked it. These lying people that they say, oh, he doesn't like Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. I said, you got to fix the crime.
Now, those remarks about Milwaukee and Trump calling it a, quote, horrible city is something that Trump walked back later, saying that he was talking about crime in the city not being, or the crime in the city being horrible, not the actual city being horrible. Now, this city also home to where the Republican National Convention will be held in the third week of July. And I actually just spoke with Trump's campaign spokeswoman about where Trump will be staying during that Republican National Convention. And she confirmed to me that he is staying in Milwaukee after reports that he was going to be staying in Illinois, which would have been a jab, of course, again to Milwaukee. Vic?
Wow. Okay, Libby Dean. Everybody, I want you to know Libby Dean has been on the campaign trail all over the country with hardly a day off for like 8 months straight. Great work, Libby. Thank you very much. Okay, it's time now for Hot Mic with Mick, the former congressman, budget director, and White House chief of staff. tells us what he's hearing and what he's thinking. All righty, Mr. Mulvaney, Wisconsin, how big a deal?
Yeah, a really big deal, Mike. In fact, I think a lot of us spend so much time listening to Donald Trump, whether or not we're Republicans or Democrats. We sort of hear these comments all the time. Oh, this is a horrible place. This is a terrible person. And we sort of know what he means. He was talking about crime and so forth, and we just sort of write it off. I was talking to a friend of mine, a Republican from Wisconsin over the weekend when I found out that Trump was coming there today. And he said, look, Mick, it's different here. Undecided voters are undecided for a reason. They don't pay attention. And all they are seeing now are billboards with a quote from Donald Trump saying Milwaukee is a horrible place. And that would make a difference here. He goes, the people who are undecided are only going to see this. They don't see Donald Trump every single day. They haven't become immune to this sort of language. It could make a difference. It doesn't surprise me to hear what Libby just said, which is that Trump opened the presentation today by saying, you know what, I love Milwaukee. I think that's the message that they have to get out. It's probably that, look, there's a lot of good Republicans in Wisconsin. They're talking to the campaign, and the campaign probably get the same message I did, which is this language could hurt Trump and he needs to fix it.
Well, he did everything but pop open a Pabst Blue Ribbon up on the stage there. And you mentioned Wisconsin very quick. Here's the latest Decision Desk HQ average of polls in Wisconsin. President Biden, it's pretty much a dead heat, but slightly up at any rate. Okay, moving on now, a former colleague of yours in the House of Representatives, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Today, the good news is the House Ethics Committee is dropping a number of probes into the Florida Republican, including whether or not he shared inappropriate videos on the House floor. He was accused of that. He's exonerated now by the Ethics Committee. The bad news for Matt Gaetz is they are looking into more allegations, including, quote, sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. In all, the committee says it's issued 25 subpoenas and spoken to more than a dozen witnesses in its ongoing probe. And, of course, Matt Gaetz calls the investigations frivolous and saying this is Soviet. Okay, Mick, what's your take on this? How much trouble is Matt Gaetz in?
Yeah, a good bit, and here's why. First of all, the committee is one of the few truly bipartisan committees in Congress. So it's going to be even number of Republicans and Democrats. Now, as soon as I say that, the Matt Gaetz defenders outside of Congress are going to say, well, Matt doesn't have any friends in Congress. He doesn't want any friends. He didn't go to Washington to make friends. I get that. What he doesn't have right now in Congress are people who are defending him. If I saw somebody being mistreated by the Ethics Committee, I would be saying something publicly, even if I didn't like that person. There's nobody saying that right now about Matt Gaetz, and that tells me that he might have bigger problems than folks are leaning into.
Yeah, and I agree. I covered the House of Representatives every day for 11 years, and the Ethics Committee was known as sort of fenced off. It's evenly divided, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, generally sober-minded members. For that statement today, it was really extraordinary, wasn't it?
It was. Now, they came out and said there was a lot of bad information getting out there, and they wanted to set the record straight. They did make it clear
which came from, among other people, Matt Gaetz himself. Yeah,
and Matt sort of tipped it off, as I understand. So, but look, a perfect example of what the committee does. They come out and they say, look, we're dropping these charges because we don't believe them to be worthwhile pursuing, but we're going to go ahead and pursue these. That's what this committee is like. It is one of the few balanced committees in the House.
All right. Hot Mike McNick. One of these days I'm going to get through that without stumbling on it. All right.
It's your name, Vic. I mean, you could be the Hot Mike with Mick. You could be the Hot Mike with Mick. Michael Starr Hopkins be the Hot Mike with Mick. We could both open our collars a little bit.
It works for me, no question. One more thing, Mick, I wanted to bring up with you. It's primary day in Georgia, Oklahoma, and Virginia. And as voters head to the polls, I want to get your thoughts on one particular race, and that's in Virginia. It's Bob Good. He's facing a primary challenge from State Senator John McGuire, who has the endorsement of former President Donald Trump. Good drew Trump's ire after backing Ron DeSantis in the presidential run. And so, Mick, Bob Good, he's chairman of the Freedom Caucus. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. He's a diehard conservative, and he won his last election by over 15 points. So how significant a role will the Donald Trump endorsement play in today's primary?
There's a price to pay for crossing the leader of the party. There just is. If you bet on the wrong horse and the other horse decides to take it out on you, this is politics. It is. So this is one of the rare cases where Trump and McCarthy are lined up against Bob Good. But here's what I'm watching more than those two. Those are the big names. Everybody's paying attention to that.
Yeah.
A name that doesn't come up very often. Warren Davidson, another member of the Freedom Caucus, came out over the weekend against Bob Good, supported Bob Good's primary opponent. Now, that's within the Freedom Caucus itself. It has nothing to do with the Trump campaign and nothing to do with the McCarthy leadership fight. It's something going on within the Freedom Caucus, and that's what I'll be watching after this election is over.
Okay, well, never a dull moment within the House Republican Conference and the Freedom Caucus. Mick Mulvaney, thanks very much for your insights. Appreciate it very much. Good to see you soon.
Thanks, Vic.
Okay, so did you see this out of Cheyenne, Wyoming? A mayoral candidate, Victor Miller, says if he's elected, he won't be making any decisions, but an AI chat GPT bot will do that instead. The chat bot is nicknamed Vic. I kind of like that. It works for me.
Don't humanize him. Don't humanize him.
Virtual integrated citizen. But Wyoming Secretary of State says that's not legal. Okay. Has it come to this now?
I mean, I know we were putting...
Take the partisanship out of politics, right? Leave it to a robot.
But you can't. The Democrats are going to respond with is AI algorithms are based on previous actions. There's a lot of things we've gotten wrong in American history about how to govern, and that's what the AI is going to spit out. So I have a big problem with this.
And many are going to say that the AI and those people, those shadowy figures behind the algorithms and who are setting up the intelligence are pulling the strings like the Wizard of Oz.
Well, aren't they? You mean they're not?
I feel that way. But look, let's start here. Let's have AI help with gerrymandering first.
Agree with that.
Oh, that's
100%. Redistricting reform will dramatically transform our politics.
If a college student can get expelled for using AI on a term paper, then how could a politician make his decisions and proclamations and policy decisions based on it? Have you used AI, Carly?
I have used AI. I mean, this is one of those things where I feel like if people want to vote for somebody who says, I'm not going to make any decisions, I'm going to outsource them to AI, I guess that's how our system works, and voters speak, and okay, but it's a dangerous path to go down, I think.
Voters might be okay with that.
Yeah, if he wins, I mean, if he's outwardly saying, this is how I would govern, I'm not going to make decisions, I'm going to outsource it to this robot, if people are into that, all right.
Good for this guy. We're talking about him. When was the last time we were talking about Cheyenne, Wyoming?
Like the Minnesota town that elected a dog.
Yeah, see?
It's a gimmick.
All right, well, this guy, Victor Miller, said, quote, it's my belief that as they get smarter, they shed a lot of those biases, and what we end up with is more intelligence, less biases, and really kind of a showcasing of just pure data-driven analysis of what's happening in the world. Okay, so it's a perfect utopia, right?
Oh, yeah, Elon Musk running our
I, for one, bow before our new chatbot masters.
There's so many... As we enter this new technological age, there's so many issues that humans have trouble answering about morality and ethics. And how is the computer algorithm going to do that when it has no humanity?
It is the future, but we have a long way to go to get our arms around it and make sure it's clean, safe, and not being manipulated.
As long as they don't start moderating political...
And just wait till...
We're all going to be out of business.
Just wait till China hacks it, and then we're screwed.
Maybe 10 times more entertaining.
Or Russia.
Okay, coming up. In St. Petersburg, a blown door plug, safety concerns, and several whistleblowers. Can the public trust Boeing again? The company's CEO testifying in an emotional hearing on Capitol Hill today, what he said in response to all the criticism. And why was the frontman for the Talking Heads, David Byrne, on Capitol Hill today? That's next on The Hill.
NewsNation tonight. Elizabeth Smart, abducted at age 14, held hostage for 9 months. 22 years later, she's turning her tragedy into purpose. And tonight, she's guest hosting a full hour of Banfield. Tonight, 10/9 Central, only on NewsNation.
Today on Capitol Hill over the company's growing safety issues with its planes. Calhoun first apologized to the victims of families of the plane's crashes.
I apologize for the grief that we have caused. And I want you to know we are totally committed in their memory to work and focus on safety.
Well, that was a dramatic moment just right at the top of that hearing, but some lawmakers weren't buying his promise to keep people safe.
You're cutting corners, you are eliminating safety procedures, and you're being rewarded for it. You got a huge raise, a huge increase. So it's working out great for you. For the American people, they're in danger. For your workers, they're in peril. For your whistleblowers, they literally fear for their lives.
So all of this drama comes after a new whistleblower came forward today accusing Boeing of using defective parts on some of its planes and then hiding it from federal investigators. Panel, how much will Congress be able to do to hold Boeing accountable? I mean, this is one of Congress's functions, right, that I think is underrated. It's a steam valve. It's a forum. There doesn't necessarily have to be legislation. That man was up there getting grilled today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is an area where everybody at this table can kind of agree. You look at this and you think this is not enough. I think about the victims' families watching this guy apologize after he's pocketed over $30 million
$30 million.
in his salary.
Yeah.
They're saying, this is just simply not enough. I don't care about your apologies. I don't care. And by the way, he stuck to his guns when Hawley grilled him. So this is exactly why you have the FAA, Congress, Department of Transportation hold this company accountable. They've gotten away with it for far too long.
And I think it gets to a bigger issue we have in this country of corporate CEOs making millions upon millions of dollars in these golden parachutes while the workers aren't making equal amounts. And while we have them importing parts and cutting corners, at what point is this just ethically immoral?
I think by most standards, the guy, why is he getting a bonus?
Yeah.
Boeing is an iconic American company.
Well, I want to first be careful with what I say about Boeing, or else you're going to be reading about me in the papers. Found in a dumpster behind a RFK. But the fact of the matter is,
you're referring to whistleblowers who are in fact
disappearing and dying.
Questionable circumstances.
So I don't. It wasn't by my own hand. But I want to just say
that's what he said.
But I want to say, the board needs to step in here because they have a duty to the shareholders. He made a point that the company isn't making profit. The stock price is flailing. That's when the board has to step in and remove him. It's bad PR more than bad work, just as much as bad work.
But you know, he admitted that the company had retaliated at this hearing against the whistleblowers, and there was a new whistleblower today. Before this hearing, a dramatic press conference by some of the family's victims, the victims, the family members of the victims of these crashes. Let's have a listen.
I want them to be held accountable for murdering 346 lives.
This isn't just a fight about us, it's a fight for the public, for the safety of the public. We will not relent, we will not stop. It's been 5 years, we're still here, and we'll keep going for as long as we need to.
And Brad, there's nothing partisan about this issue.
This is what matters. Lives, families disrupted. This is why I think it crosses party identity when you have an issue that is so clear about what it means to be human and American, and that when a company shows not only recklessness, but when they show like an intent, disregard for life,
and retaliation for people.
It's a huge problem. Now I'm going to say something a little partisan here. Democrats are in the majority of the Senate. They're the ones that organize this hearing. This is what Congress should be focusing on. Republicans in the House are trying to exonerate Donald Trump, and it's all about Trump. This is what Congress needs to be focused on.
All right.
Josh Hawley gave a pretty grilling testament to CEO.
But we set the agenda in the Senate, and this was on the agenda.
All right, moving on. Now, the popular nicotine pouch, Zyn, is in some trouble. Zyn. The headline, Zyn nicotine pouch maker halts sales on its website. The District of Columbia is investigating whether the maker of Zyn violated its ban on flavored nicotine products. Panel, Zyn was supposed to help provide alternatives to tobacco and traditional cigarettes. So our government, this concern by government officials, and I know, talking to you before the show, you have some experience with Zyn. These are actually nicotine pouches. They're really gaining in popularity.
They're incredibly popular. I think like 90% of my guy friends and some of my girlfriends use Zyn regularly.
Really? Wow, I don't know any girl.
I won't sell them out on television to America, but I just want to say this. It's tyrannical. In the words of Tucker Carlson, Zyn is not a sin. The fact of the matter is, we talk about the dangers of tobacco. People are weaning off of tobacco by using alternative products like this. Adults should be able to make adult decisions whether or not my Zyn is non-flavored, or if it's citrus, or if it's coffee.
Okay, just for the record, temporary pause in on-land sales because here in the district you can't sell flavored products, but it's not tobacco.
Yeah, right.
It's not a tobacco product. It's actually transferred through the gums through this little pouch and gives you whatever. What does it give you?
Right. And by the way, here's just a normal nicotine buzz. But there's Chuck Schumer holding up.
That was in January.
That's also the man behind banning the original Four Loko. So I trust him zero.
My libertarian roots are coming out here in the sense of let adults make their own decisions. Now the kids, the targeting of minors, and that kind of advertising needs to be shut down and punished.
Well, isn't that the whole point behind banning the flavors?
Yes, and I think that it's kind of we had this big push against cigarettes, and then now you have even more dangerous forms of nicotine getting into the hands of kids and minors. It is such a problem. I think that goes across party lines. When you are flavoring something like cotton candy and bubble gum, let's be honest about who the target audience is there. I'm fine with adults making their own decisions too, but clearly when you're talking about, again, the flavors, this is targeted towards kids. What about
flavored booze?
Yeah, booze, flavored booze.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that.
But the answer is not to ban it. The answer is to heavily regulate it.
All right. Well, we'll have some Boone's Farm after the show.
Only cotton
Okay,
candy
moving on.
flavor.
The singer and frontman of the band Talking Heads believes it's time to start making cents and dollars on Capitol Hill. He was there today talking with lawmakers about artists' music royalties and the American Music Fairness Act. Here he is with Senator Chris Coons today. This bipartisan Senate bill, I think Marsha Blackburn is on this bill as well, would require radio stations to pay artists royalties when their songs are played. It comes as the band releases a deluxe soundtrack edition of Stop Making Sense for its 40th anniversary. Okay, burning down the House and the Senate. Look, I think I listen to Pandora because I'm old. I guess I'm supposed to be listening to Spotify. My kids tell me.
Yes.
But, I mean,
we're old now. That's old down too.
The royalties, the streaming, it's minuscule. Yeah. Right. But this is about radio, and for years, there were no royalties if your song's played on the radio. Right. I always thought it was a symbiotic sort of promotional thing. You listen to a song on the radio, and you would go out and buy the album. But that's no longer the case.
I mean, and the issue of creative licensing is huge, particularly as we enter all these new mediums and new markets. Right. Yeah. Enter AI, it's only making it more complicated. I worked for a member of Congress from Orlando, so this was a big issue with Disney and Universal between the creators and these companies. And so this, it's going to be a thing we're talking about for a long time.
Okay, panel, thank you very much.
As always. Thank you, Vic.
All right, coming up. Eyes front, students, not down at your screens. California Governor Gavin Newsom wants to restrict the use of phones in schools, but can it be enforced? I'll talk with Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. He's coming up next. Welcome back, everyone. Before we say goodbye, here is a story that caught our eye. California Governor Gavin Newsom wants to severely restrict the use of smartphones in schools, telling Politico, quote, when children and teens are in school, they should be focused on their studies, not on their screens. Okay, host of On Balance, Leland Vittert, joining me now. Leland, Newsom didn't really lay out how it would be enforced. I think everybody's down with the whole idea of paying attention to